to Clash of the Dice. In this episode I'll be taking you through how to play Elder Sign by Fantasy Flight Games. We'll also be going through to the expansions, the Unseen Forces and the Gates of Arkham. Elder Sign is a cooperative game that can also be played solo, in which players take on the role of investigators trying to stop the Ancient One from breaking through from a parallel universe into our reality. Elder Sign is set in Arkham Museum in the Cthulhu mythos based on the works by H.P. Lovecraft, and in each game you are going up against one of the Ancient Ones who is trying to break through into our reality. As you progress through the game, Doom tokens will be added to the Ancient One's Doom track, and when the Doom track becomes full, the Ancient One is released and really bad stuff happens. In order to stop the Ancient One from breaking free, you have to collect Elder Signs to the number indicated on the Ancient One's cards. So for Cthulhu here, we have to collect 13 Elder Signs to seal him in and prevent him from coming into our reality. In order to collect Elder Signs, you need to complete these adventure cards, and you'll get rewarded with various rewards, including Elder Signs. You complete the tasks by rolling these dice and matching the symbols against the symbols on the cards. When you've completed all of the symbols on the card, you complete the task and you claim the reward. If you fail to achieve the task, if you fail to complete it and match the symbols, you have to suffer the penalties. At the start of each game, you'll turn over one of these cards. These are the Mythos cards, and you have to resolve what it says. So you'll have an initial problem. So in this case, you either add one Doom token to the Doom track, or one investigator with 4 or more stamina must lose 3 stamina. I'll explain more about stamina later. And then you very often get what's called a lingering effect. So the next time the clock strikes midnight, a monster appears. I'll explain more about monsters later. In terms of midnight, at the end of each player's turn, you move this clock 3 hours. So the first player would move it to the 3, the next player would move it to the 6, then to the 9, and then up to the 12. 12 always means midnight. It doesn't mean midday, it always means midnight. And at midnight, you then draw a new Mythos card and resolve that before you continue play. The adventure cards, at the beginning of the game, you would deal out 6 of these initially, and as you complete them, you get to claim them and then you replace them as we go along. So, on each card there are a series of tasks. Some of them are ordered, which is indicated by this arrow, so when they're ordered you need to start at the top and work your way down. You have to do them in that order, unless you have a special ability that says otherwise. If they're not ordered, you can complete them in any order that you like. In order to complete them, you roll your green dice, all of them together, and as you complete the task you get the required symbol. You add the dice to the card. So for this one we need 2 investigation, and then we need 4 investigation. There isn't a 4 investigation on the die, so you have to add the numbers together. And then finally we need a scroll, or a lore as it's referred to. When you've completed the card, you take the dice away, you get to claim the rewards, which are printed in the bottom right hand corner. So in this case we would gain these items here, which I'll explain more about in a moment. If we failed it, then we would suffer the penalties in the bottom left. We also get to claim trophies to the number indicated in the green circle. Trophies can be exchanged for items and other things later on in the game. So once you've completed a card, you take it away, you add it to your trophy stack, and you replace it with another card. If you roll all of your dice and you can't successfully complete any of the tasks, then you have to take 1 die away and then re-roll the others, and you keep doing that until it is no longer possible to fulfill the task or you complete the task. Some cards have special effects, like this one has an at midnight effect. So when the clock strikes midnight, you have to do what it says on the card. So you have to keep an eye open for that, and it's a good idea to prioritise taking out those at midnight effect cards first. Other cards can lock dice. So if there is a padlock symbol on the card, you have to place the corresponding coloured dice onto it, and you can no longer use that die until you have completed that adventure card. Something I want to quickly draw your attention to is some of the differences in original versions of the game to later versions of the game. This is actually a card from the Unseen Forces expansion, and it's more or less identical to the original The Elder Sign card that you got in the base game. The main difference is down here in the reward section. In the base game, that was originally a doom symbol, and that confused people because they thought that that meant you had to add a doom to the doom track if you successfully completed this mission. What it was supposed to indicate is actually you take a doom counter off the doom track if you successfully complete the mission. So in Unseen Forces they have reprinted a couple of the original cards from the original set with this symbol that's got a doom with a line going through it to indicate that actually you're supposed to take that doom counter away. So just to go over dice rolling in a bit more detail and also cover a rule called focusing. When you move to an adventure, you roll the dice and you try to match the symbols to the tasks, going one line at a time. So on this dice roll here we have 1 terror, so we can match this up to the top row of the tasks because we've got 1 terror and that only requires 1 terror. We can then move on to the next row and that requires 2 terror. So we roll the remaining dice, and this time again we only come up with 1 terror. Now we need 2 to be able to complete it, so at this stage we would have to take a die away and roll the remaining dice. What we can do once per turn is focus a useful die. So we need a terror, we need 2 terror, we have 1, we've taken 1 die away. We can now do what's called focusing and take that die and put it on our character chit and then roll the remaining 3. If then we still don't get enough dice to be able to complete the task, we take a die away, that can remain focused, and then we roll the dice again. The next roll we get another terror, so we can now put both of these dice on and we've completed that task. In this example we've got 2 investigators at the same card. We've rolled our dice and it's this player's turn. Now we can either complete the top task or we can try and complete the harder bottom task. If we go for the harder bottom task we could focus a die and remove a die and then re-roll the rest. Alternatively, the other character who is at the same location can do an action which is similar to focusing. It's called providing assistance. Effectively it is focusing, but it's the other character who does it, and again, just like focusing, they can do it once per turn. You can't focus and provide assistance in the same turn, you have to do one or the other. So we could get our friend to focus this die for us, we remove a die, we re-roll, and we come up with this result. So now we can focus this die ourselves, remove a die, roll the others, and we come up with this result. So now we have sufficient dice to complete the bottom task. So focusing and providing assistance can only be done once per turn. We roll our last die and unfortunately we come up with a scroll. There's nothing we can do about that. We can't re-roll any dice because we can't take one away. So now this character who provided assistance, we have failed the task. Our main character who attempted the task suffers this penalty. The character providing assistance must choose to lose either a sanity or a stamina. That's regardless of whichever task they are on. If you provide assistance at a task and the adventure is failed, you have to lose either a sanity or a stamina. If we had succeeded in completing the adventure, then only the active player gets the payout. The assisting character doesn't. In addition to having to match up dice to the tasks, some of the adventure cards will require you to do additional things. Sometimes a task will require you to get rid of a sanity or a stamina in order to complete the task. Others might require you to advance the clock one space. Some of the adventure cards have terror effects indicated by the word terror and then some text explaining what happens. So we roll our dice, and if we come up with a terror symbol but we are unable to complete a task, we have to apply the terror effect, which in this case is add 1 doom token to the doom track. So we failed the roll, we take a dice away, we re-roll, and then each time we come up with a terror and other unusable dice, we can't complete a task, we have to apply that terror effect every time. So that can be particularly nasty. There are different terror effects, so for example this one, the terror effect on this one is discard 1 trophy of your choice. There's others that make monsters appear, so terror effects can be quite nasty. As well as the regular adventure cards, you can also draw these other world cards. These work exactly the same as a regular adventure card in that you have to complete the tasks and then you claim the rewards if you are successful, or you suffer the penalties if you don't complete them, if you're not successful. But they're not there all the time like the regular adventure cards are. You don't deal any at the start of the game. These only come into play if a Mythos card says so, or you can place some as a result of a reward from a regular adventure card. Now they are a reward because they are much more likely to reward you with elder signs, and quite often more than one elder sign, so they're really useful cards to get. Unlike regular adventure cards, when you complete these, they don't get replaced with another card. You have to wait until either another Mythos card or another regular card tells you to place one. Some of the penalties that you suffer when you fail to complete one of these cards can be particularly nasty. So for example, this symbol down here means that you have to add a doom to the doom track. Likewise, some of the rewards aren't necessarily all that rewarding. So this symbol here that looks like a crazy bee is actually based on a description of one of the creatures from one of H.P. Lovecraft's works. This is an instruction to draw a monster. Sometimes you get told by a Mythos card to draw a monster, or maybe there'll be an effect that says when you enter this particular area, if you put a character on this, then you have to add a monster. In this case, at midnight a monster would appear. When you have to draw a monster, you have to take one of these monster cards and place it onto one of the adventures. At the beginning of the game, all of these monster chits, they're kind of a thick cardboard, are placed in a cup, and you have to draw one blind when you're instructed to take one. The way you prioritise where the monster goes is based on whether or not there's some of these cobwebby type markings on the adventure cards. If there are adventure cards with these cobwebby markings, you have to put the monster on one of those first. In this case, we could choose whether we wanted to put it on this one or this one. Regardless of which one we put it on, you can see that this is now going to make that card significantly harder to achieve because it's added extra tasks. If you were to achieve the tasks on the monster but not the others on the card, then you would vanquish the monster and you can take the monster away. Likewise, if you complete the monster tasks and the tasks on the card, then you vanquish the monster and you also get to keep the card. Monsters are worth trophies in the same way as the cards are. If there are no adventure cards with cobwebby markings on it, so for example this one, then if none of them have that cobwebby marking, they're all regular cards as it were, you can then choose which one of those cards to add the monster to, and it always goes at the bottom of the task order. So this one again would be really difficult to achieve because it's an ordered card, so you have to start at the top, work your way down, and as you can see, 3 and a 9 investigation, and then all of these mean that's going to be pretty difficult to do. If it's not an ordered card, then you could try and take out the monster first to try and make it easier to achieve this adventure the next time you try to attempt it. Some of the other world cards in the core set have monster spaces, but they're slightly different to regular monster spaces in as much as they only cover part of the task. So these are called partial monster spaces, and when you draw a monster card, you have to partially cover the task. So it adds extra tasks to the original task, and again makes life a lot more difficult. On the other hand, depending on which monster you get, if you get a cultist is nice and easy because a cultist only needs either a peril or a scroll to defeat. So if you have Yuggoth in play, at the moment you'd need a peril, a terror and 8 investigation. Now obviously there's only a 1 in 6 chance of getting a terror on a die because there's only 1 terror result on each die. If you had a cultist, if you drew a cultist, it's a good place to play the cultist because you then increase the chances of being able to complete that task because you've now got a 1 in 3 chance or 2 in 6 rather than a 1 in 6. So it makes Yuggoth that little bit easier. The other way they're slightly different is usually if it was a monster space that completely covers a task, if you were to defeat the monster task without defeating the card as well, you would at least kill off the monster to make it, in theory, a little bit easier next time, especially if you're going up against something like a vampire. You could defeat the vampire, take it away, and then next turn you don't have to worry about the vampire, you just complete the card. If it's a partial monster task, like this, you have to defeat the monster and the card at the same time. So if you defeat the monster task and also this little bit of the task on the card, but don't complete the card, you don't defeat the monster. You have to do the whole thing all together. The rewards you can claim when you successfully complete a mission are indicated at the bottom corner of the card. So for example, for this one, the gun represents the yellow cards, which are common items, and typically they will allow you to add the yellow die to your dice pool. The dagger symbol indicates a red card, which is a unique item, and again typically it will allow you to add a red die to your dice pool. The books token indicates these purple cards, which are spells, and typically they'll allow you to lock a dice onto it of your selection. So if you roll the dice and you come up with something that you can't use right there and then but will probably come in handy later, for example a scroll or a lore, you can spell that up and save it there for later, but unfortunately you don't get to roll that dice with the others. But if you desperately need a scroll for a particular task, it's handy to have one there waiting for you. The silhouette of the figure indicates one of these brown ally cards, and they will vary, but they're usually really useful. So for example, this one allows you to take 2 of the red cards, the unique items, place them on this card, and then you can use them as if they are your own. And when you've used both of those items, you discard this card. You've also got these footprint symbols, which are these clue tokens. And what that allows you to do is re-roll any number of dice. So you don't necessarily fail the roll straight away. If you roll the dice and you've only got 1 symbol of what you need, but you need more, you would normally have to discard a die to roll again. These allow you to re-roll any of the dice before you then have to go to discarding dice to re-roll again. You've also got the all-important elder signs, and you gain 1 elder sign, or you gain 1 of each item for whatever is indicated, the number indicated in the bottom right corner. So this has got 2 elder sign symbols, so you would gain 2 elder signs. This has got 2 ally symbols, so you would gain 2 allies. These are some of the starter characters from the original set, and they're all laid out in the same way, including characters in some of the later expansions. So they've all got a number of sanity, which are the blue ones, and number of stamina, which is the red symbols. So blue brains and red hearts. That is the amount of starting stamina and sanity that each character gets. As they progress through the game, various game events will force them to lose sanity or stamina. So this card would require that the character loses 2 sanity and 1 stamina. When either your sanity or your stamina gets down to 0, you have been devoured by the Ancient One, and you have to add a doom to the doom track. You can then, if you choose to, take another character and carry on where you left off, but you lose all of your items and equipment. You get to start afresh with that character. All characters have a list of starting items, so Mandy Thompson here starts with a common item and a clue. Vincent Lee starts with a common item and a spell, and Daryl Simmons starts with a common item and a unique item. Each character also has their own unique ability. So Mandy Thompson, her unique ability is once per day, after any roll has been rolled, Mandy may re-roll 2 dice before determining if the active player was able to complete a task. So that's not necessarily her doing that, it could be any of the other players because it's the active player. Once per day does not mean once per turn, it means once between the hours of 12 and 12. So if Mandy Thompson gets 2 goes within this period, she can only use that ability once, because it's once per day. This card represents the entrance to the museum, and this is where all of your characters start off, and it's also where they return to after they successfully complete an adventure. Whilst it is their turn and they're on this card, they can choose to move to this card if they so choose. Whilst they're there, they can choose to do one of the actions that's actually printed on it. So they can receive first aid, or they can go to the lost and found, or they can buy a souvenir. When you receive first aid, you trade in the trophies on your card for whatever it is you can afford to buy with the trophies. So 2 trophies in the first aid centre will allow you to regain either all of your stamina or all of your sanity, whereas 4 trophies would fully regain both. You could heal 1 sanity or 1 stamina for free. At the lost and found, this is handy if you don't have any trophies. You can simply roll one of the green dice, and whatever result you get, you receive the corresponding reward. Or you can buy a souvenir, and the list of souvenirs you can buy is there. It's effectively the items, and their corresponding cost is next to it. So you can even buy an Elder Sign for 10 trophies. So it can come in pretty handy. Looking at the Ancient One himself, Cthulhu, the dreamer of dreams and the inspirer of madness, the card tells you what it is you need to know about the Ancient One during the game. So in the middle, it will tell you how many Elder Signs you need to win the game. That will vary depending on which Ancient One you're doing. So for Cthulhu, it's 13 Elder Signs. On the Doom track, you fill it in as if you're reading a book. So start in the top left, work your way along, down to the next line, and then down to the next line. As you place counters on the symbols, some of them have got monster symbols on it. So if you place a Doom counter on a monster symbol, you have to add a monster to the game. Each Ancient One has got its own special abilities, just like the characters have. So in the case of Cthulhu, it reduces each investigator, that's the character, their maximum sanity and stamina by 1. So it makes your guys particularly susceptible to getting devoured. You have to pay particular attention to those special abilities as you go through the game, because some of them will apply to when you use particular items. So in some cases, if you use a unique item, you might suffer a penalty, or if you use a clue, you might suffer a penalty. So that varies depending on which character it is, which Ancient One it is that you're up against. When the Doom track gets full, that's not necessarily the end of the game. It is if you're up against Azathoth. Azathoth is probably the most straightforward one to go up against. When the Doom track gets full, you lose the game. It's that simple. With all of the others, or the majority of the others, once it gets full, the Ancient One has awoken and you then need to defeat him. To defeat him, you have to roll dice, you ignore the adventure cards, you have to roll dice and complete these tasks here. This is called the battle task. Every time you successfully complete the battle task, you remove a Doom token, and when you have removed the last Doom token off the Doom track, or if you like the first Doom token off the Doom track, then you have successfully completed the game and you've defeated the Ancient One. You treat this exactly as you would the others. So when it comes to rolling the dice, you roll the dice, and if you can't complete it, you take one away. But every time you do complete it, you remove a Doom token off the Doom track. And then at the end of your turn, when you've exhausted all of your dice, then you advance the clock as normal. When the clock strikes midnight, it's the Ancient One's turn to attack you, and you resolve those attacks by looking under the attack section on the card, and you do whatever that says. And most of the attacks are pretty nasty, and the chances are, if you get to the stage where the Ancient One is awake, you've pretty much lost the game anyway. But you never know, it is possible to defeat the Ancient One. So we're set up for a game of the base game of Elder Sign. Over here we've got our characters, we've got the entrance card, we've got our Ancient One, we've got 6 adventure cards laid out in the middle with the replenishing deck over here, so as we complete the adventures we take them away and replace them. Over here we've got the clock, we've got our Mythos card that's in play with the other Mythos cards next to it, and down here we've got our other world cards. So as we are required to reveal other world cards, we flip them over and put them at the bottom here. So you do need quite a lot of space, because ideally you want to get Cthulhu here out of the way so we can put more other world cards out down at the bottom. There is no limit to how many other world cards you can have out, so it's not a case of once these 3 spaces are filled, that's it, we get Doom or anything like that. You can have as many out there as you like, or as the game instructs you to have. So at the start of the game, you reveal the first Mythos card, and then the characters are starting at the entrance card. During their movement phase, they can move from the entrance card to an adventure card. If they're already at an adventure card, they can move from an adventure card to another adventure card, or they can move back to the entrance card and utilise the abilities of the adventure card. If they move to an adventure card, they can roll the dice, use items to try to complete the card. If they succeed in completing the card, they gain the rewards. If they fail, they suffer the penalties. At the end of the turn, so after trying to resolve the card, or after using the abilities on the entrance card, you then advance the clock 1 space around, and then it's the next player's turn. They move, they do their actions, at the end of their turn they advance the clock. Then the next player moves, tries to resolve the card, and then at the end of the turn they advance the clock, and so on and so forth. When we get round to midnight, we resolve any at midnight effects on the cards, and we draw a new Mythos card, resolve that, and then play continues. If at the start of your turn you're already on a adventure card, you can choose to either stay there and try to resolve it again if you failed on the previous turn, or you can, as I say, move to a different card. Play continues like that until either you've successfully acquired sufficient Elder Signs to seal in the Ancient One, or the Doom track gets full and the final battle takes place with the Ancient One. So that was the basics of Elder Sign. We're now going to move on and look at the first expansion, which is the Unseen Forces, and the main differences are that, and we'll look at each one of these in a bit more depth, is the original entrance card has been replaced by these 4 individual cards. So we've still got First Aid Station, we've got Lost and Found, we've got Souvenir Shop, but we've also got the Chapel. And the Chapel is interesting because it's introduced a new Cursed and Blessed mechanic that allows you to use additional dice, but also that can have a detrimental effect. As I say, we'll look at that in a bit more detail in a sec. There's some new Mythos cards, and these are called Insight Mythos cards, which gives you an either-or option when you draw them. And there's also the Master Mythos cards, which are a bit like the regular Mythos cards and the Insight Mythos cards, only they're much more difficult. So for example, this one simply adds 2 Doom tokens to the Doom track, or 4 monsters appear. I think when they were designing this expansion, they'd realised that they'd made the core game a little bit too easy, mainly because you could buy Elder Signs rather than having to win them as a reward for completing an adventure. And because of that, the Souvenir Shop allows you to buy pretty much everything you could in the core game, except there's no Elder Signs. You can no longer buy Elder Signs. There are also some mechanics in the game that require you to shut down one of these entrance cards. So for example, the First Aid Station might become unusable, in which case you would have to turn it over and you can no longer use that particular aspect of the starting cards. The Souvenir Shop is where all the characters start, and it's where they return to after after successfully completing an adventure, and they can return there even if that gets closed, but they can no longer buy stuff there. So a closer look at one of the Insight Mythos cards, This is a good example. You either close the Lost and Found and the Chapel entrance cards for the rest of the game, or you add one Doom token to the Doom track, then a monster appears. And that's one of the regular ones. That's not one of the the Master Mythos cards. Like say the Master Mythos card, 4 monsters appear, or you add 2 Doom tokens to the Doom track. So they're both pretty nasty. You have to choose the option that is possible. So there might be an option that is not possible. So, for example, this one, each investigator discards all common items and unique items. If none of the investigators, if none of the characters have got any common items or unique items, then you have to choose the other one, which is one investigator of the player's choice is devoured. So you have to choose the one that is possible. Okay, so moving on to blessings and curses. These will result either from going to the chapel, in which case you can trade in trophies to become blessed, or you can be rewarded with getting blessed from a adventure card, or there might be a Mythos card that says you can get blessed. If you get blessed, then, and you have no detrimental effects, so i.e. you are not already cursed, then you get to use the white dice in addition to the green dice. And the white die is exactly the same as the green dice. It's got the same faces on it as the green dice. And you can simply add that to your dice pool for as long as you are blessed. If you then become blessed again, you get to choose one, either a clue token, a unique item, a spell, or a common item. You don't get to use 2 white dice. If you fail an adventure, you lose the blessing. If you become cursed, so for example there is a Mythos card that says you must become cursed, you lose the blessing. If you are normal, i.e. you don't have the blessing, then you do in fact become cursed. This is the curse symbol, this is the blessing symbol. So when you become cursed, you have to add the black die to your dice pool. Again, it's got exactly the same symbols on it as the green dice, and it can be quite nasty, inasmuch as when you roll it with the green dice, whatever symbol is showing on the black dice, you must remove a matching green die. You only have to remove one of the green dice. So for example, if we roll 3 investigation and we had 2 green investigation, 3 investigations, we would only have to discard one of these. But yeah, it does make things that little bit more difficult. And again, you continue being cursed until you successfully complete an adventure, or you manage to get yourself blessed. If you are cursed when you get blessed, you don't actually get blessed, you just remove the curse. In either case, if you are blessed or cursed, and when the Ancient One awakens, then you disregard that effect. So the Ancient One awakens, but you will no longer be blessed and you will no longer be cursed. Because, to be fair, being cursed and going up against an Ancient One, you're going to be in bad shape. And likewise, if you are blessed and going up against the Ancient One, it ain't going to do you much good. So this character is currently cursed. If the character becomes cursed again as a result of either a penalty or a Mythos card, and he is already cursed, he doesn't become cursed twice and roll 2 dice. He gets devoured, and we add a Doom to the Doom track. Moving on to the Gates of Arkham expansion. This made some quite significant changes over the base game. It took the action out of the museum and out onto the streets of the town of Arkham. So to that end, there is a new Streets of Arkham entrance card that replaces the original entrance card and also the individual ones in the Unseen Forces expansion. On top of that, there's an all-new adventure deck which completely replaces the original adventure deck. There's also a brand new Mythos deck that completely replaces the old Mythos deck, the original Mythos deck. There are new Otherworld cards, there's new Ancient Ones, there's new monsters, there's new items, and there's also a new deck of skill cards. Now these operate just like the original items, like unique items, common items, allies. So you get rewards you get them as rewards for completing tasks. There is also a new gate mechanic, which I'll talk about in more detail in a second, and also two factions that you can join. You can join one or the other. Again, I'll explain that in just a sec. So the new Gates of Arkham Adventure cards replace the previous adventure cards from the core set and the Unseen Forces edition, and it's a brand new deck that's quite hefty. It's a really thick deck of cards, and they do work slightly differently to the original ones. For starters, you deal 3 face up and 3 face down. The ones that are face up work more or less like the original cards. There are a couple of changes to them. So for example, this red dot here, that means that if there's a red dot, you must draw one of these new event cards, and you must resolve that event card before you attempt the tasks on the card. Now some of these can be really good. For example, this one would allow you to gain a clue or a spell. Some of them can be really bad. So for example, this one requires you to add 2 Doom tokens to the Doom track if you successfully complete the adventure. So, mixture of good and bad there. The completed adventure card, so when you complete one of these, you get to keep it like you would previously, and you replace it with a card that is face down. The face down cards work slightly differently in that before you turn it over, you have the opportunity to resolve the text at the bottom of the card. So this one, you may spend 3 trophies to return 1 monster to the monster cup, so that's pretty good. Other ones have midnight effects, such as adding Doom to the Doom track, so again a mixture of good and bad. Another significant addition to the Gates of Arkham is gates in Arkham, oddly enough, and that affects the way that other world cards work. If you get instructed to open a gate or to draw an other world card, then you take the top card off the deck, put it below the adventure cards, and then you add a gate to the top of the card and you place the corresponding colour onto one of the adventure cards. There are 3 gates, blue, red and yellow, and you cannot attempt the adventure card until you have completed the corresponding other world card. If there are any characters on the adventure card at the time that a gate is placed, they get removed and sent to the Streets of Arkham entrance card. When you have successfully completed the other world card, so you can go to the other world card, you flip it over, you successfully complete it as you would for any other adventure, you get to keep it, you get to claim the trophies, you get to claim the rewards. So when you have completed it, you remove the gate markers and you add a seal to the adventure card. You can now visit the adventure card as normal, but the seal means that it can't then be used to have a gate marker on it. You have to use one of the other adventure cards that has not got a seal if you draw another other world card. If all 3 gates are open and you get instructed to draw another other world card or open another gate, then you have to add a monster. If all 6 adventure cards are sealed, that's bad news. You have to take all of the seals off, you then open a gate, and then you add a Doom to the Doom track. On the Doom track, for the Gates of Arkham Ancient ones, there are new gate markers on the Doom track. So as you fill up the Doom track and you place a Doom on a gate marker, you then have to open another gate. The 2 factions that you can join during the game are the Sheldon Gang and the Order of the Silver Twilight. You can't be a member of both at the same time. You can be offered membership of both at the same time, in which case you have to choose. So if you're already a member of one and you get offered membership of the other as a result of, say, a Mythos card, then you have to choose which one you want to go for. You can also pay at certain locations to join one of those 2 factions. They offer benefits in that on some cards you can ignore certain tasks. So on this card, if you are a member of the Order of the Silver Twilight, you can ignore the top task and you only have to do the others. Likewise on this one, if you're a member of the Sheldon Gang, you can ignore the top task and you only have to do the other task. It also offers benefits when it comes to rewards. So down here, if you are a member of the Order of Silver Twilight and you complete this adventure card, you get the extra reward. If you're not, you only get those three. You don't get the fourth one. Likewise, if you're a member of the Sheldon Gang, you can claim this reward in addition to the others, but if you're not a member of the Sheldon Gang, you can't claim this reward. It's worth noting that while Unseen Forces expansion is fully compatible with both the original game and Gates of Arkham is not fully compatible with the original game, so there's only certain aspects that are. Any cards that have got this yellow exclamation mark on them mean that you cannot use them with the base game, so you have to take those cards out if you intend to use them in the base game. So for example, some of the unique items and some of the other world cards you can only use if you are using the full Gates of Arkham expansion. Certainly the other cards that you get with it, so some of the new monsters and some of the item cards are fully compatible with the original game, so you can leave those in and make the original game or the Unseen Forces expansion that little bit more in depth. If you are going to get into Elder Sign, even if you just buy the base game and you intend to play it quite a lot, I do recommend you get one of these sorter boxes, box tidy things, to help speed up the process of setting the game up. So you can keep all your Elder Signs in one compartment: clue tokens, stamina tokens, sanity tokens, dice, character chits, doom tokens, gates, monster cards, all the rest of it, nice and tidy, and that makes setting up the game so much quicker and it makes life a lot easier. So that's a tip from me. If you're going to play Elder Sign a lot, get one of these to keep your game components nice and tidy. So that is Elder Sign with the Unseen Forces and the Gates of Arkham expansions. There are two other expansions which are both story based, which affect the mechanics even more than Gates of Arkham does, and they're an interesting playthrough, but they're extremely hard. I might do an episode in which we play through one of those. So the game itself, we will be doing some episodes where we play through the games with some of the expansions. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you learned something from it. You might not have done, you might know Elder Sign back to front already. But thank you for watching. Please continue to like, comment and subscribe, and God bless.